Welcome on into Forward Progress presented by Fanduel Sportsbook. I'm your host, Eric Pauly, with my guests, Suma, Judah Fortgang, and TA of CleveAnalytics.com. As always on the Monday show, we start off discussing some takeaways from the prior week. Then we look at some futures markets, talk some Week 5 openers, and then end with Monday Night Football and, of course, Judah's famed same-game parlay on Fanduel Sportsbook for one of the Monday night games. But, gentlemen, let's get right into it. We're going to start with some Week 4 recap, and we're going to start in Las Vegas. The Cleveland Browns, they dropped another game to the Las Vegas Raiders. Deshaun Watson, another poor performance, though, was a poor performance by Cleveland in general. Had that touchdown that could have given Cleveland the lead and won them the game, taken away on a holding penalty, and Deshaun Watson is looking like his days are probably over. Let's go with a resident Cleveland fan. TA, talk to me about the Browns and Deshaun Watson. What can we make of this team moving forward?
Yeah, it's funny. Of all the weeks to blame Deshaun Watson, this probably isn't the one. I mean, he's been bad since he became a Brown and has been bad most of this year. But he actually played pretty well if you watch that game. He was graded out as I think second or third highest graded quarterback by PFF. He didn't attack the downfield that often, but he kind of took what was given to him, made plays with his legs. He was fine. The offensive line continued to get ravaged by injuries. His center, Ethan Pochik, got knocked out of the game. Just the left side of the line was awful. They couldn't deal with the Raiders' stunts and loops and all those sorts of things. So they have no run game at all. It's just a kind of a cluster. It's like when he plays well, the rest of the team struggles offensively. And then when, the rest of the team is okay, he plays bad. So, there's a lot of things going on with the Browns. They're, clearly not the team that a lot of people thought they could be entering this year. If you look at the rest of the schedule, I kind of simulated out the rest of the year. They have the toughest schedule based on my ratings going forward. So sitting at 1-3, I think there's a lot of trouble here. You got Amari Cooper who's dropping easy balls left and right. He's probably dropped Deshaun Watson's two best throws all season, including yesterday right off the chest. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that in the NFL, just that wide open, and it goes right off his chest for an interception. He could be on the trading block. They had a contract dispute heading into the year. Chiefs could very well be calling here soon. So if they don't end up turning this around in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think that he's going to be on the trading block. But, pretty ugly all around for the Browns, and just a poor performance, and to lose to the Giants and the Raiders back to back with all the injuries to the Raiders is pretty pitiful.
Certainly. Suma, we have Jameis Winston sitting on the bench in Cleveland. Are you calling for Winston to start playing football in Cleveland or what?
If it's my decision, yes, because, what else do we have to lose? Like, why not ride the positive variance with Jameis now? Other than that, season could be over soon. Stefanski might lose the locker room. I will say it was not all on Watson yesterday. I think that the whole operation is struggling. I tweeted it out earlier. They are sitting at a success rate of, I think, 34% right now, which is below last year's Jets with Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyle. Like, that was a laughable offense, and the Browns are having a success rate that is even below that. So Watts is not playing great. He had a few good moments yesterday, absolutely, but drops, bad O-line play, Watson holding the ball too long, penalties. Like, they cannot run the ball on early downs whatsoever. This is a failure on so many levels, and I feel like, why not give Jameis the call? Maybe you could get a spark. Usually at the end of the games, I'm sweating my bets very hard. Yesterday, I had a terrible Raiders bet. I had Raiders pick 'em from earlier in the week. Terrible bet before Max Crosby and Devontae Adams got ruled out. Couldn't get out of it. And the last Browns drive, I wasn't even sweating. It felt like they are not going to score a touchdown here. And that's very, very bad, a very, very, very bad situation to be in. And this is basically maybe the worst offense in the league right now. And if you continue to go this route and Winston has another bad game, Stefanski might lose it all. So why not go with Jameis?
Dude, do you agree with Suma that at this point you have nothing to lose going to Jameis Winston? And also, if you do go to Jameis Winston, what does that look like in the market in terms of an upgrade from a point spread perspective going from Watson to Winston? Think that lose Judah?
Looks like we lost him. I'll just real quick. I'll say
you're more than capable of coming on this one, so let us know.
Well, I was just gonna say, in kind of if this was fantasy football or if this was on Madden, it'd be easy to pull the plug on Deshaun Watson. And I don't mind Jameis Winston. I actually think there's probably no change in the market to be honest between Winston and Watson. I don't know if it is a half a point either way. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's pretty nominal. Now Suma, if he sees that, might say, well, I think he's worth a lot more. So I'll, right away, the Browns are going to have value, and totally would understand. But I will say that just in the real world, with over $100 million of dead cap, you can't cut. There's literally no scenario on earth where you can cut Deshaun Watson. Unfortunately, the way it is from a Browns perspective, it's just that's how a guaranteed contract with this amount of money that's been kicked down the road in terms of the contract. You can't really do that. And if you bench him now, I mean, he's gonna. I'm not sure anyone cares, but it's gonna totally he's probably just gonna. Who even knows if he wants to be on the team anymore? I'm not sure anyone will take him. It would just be a complete mess. And so, like I said, I think that would be a situation where they're completely out of it. Maybe it's a month down the road, and it's just like the locker room was just like, hey, you got to make a move, or we're all kind of revolting. Like maybe you do it then. I don't think they're at that point just yet. Even if we do think could be a very slight upgrade. So I mean, that's the position they're in. That's the transaction they made, and unfortunately, they're going to have to make their bed.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Well said there, T.A. Let's talk about another veteran quarterback now with a younger quarterback. Anthony Richardson got knocked out of the game again early. Obviously, been the story of his young career so far. Joe Flacco comes in, goes for 2 touchdowns, takes 2 sacks, does what Joe Flacco needs to do, and locks in a win for the Indianapolis Colts against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not sure exactly what Richardson's health is looking like and status-wise for next week or moving forward, but Suma, talk to me. Do you think that the Indianapolis Colts have a better chance now rocking with Joe Flacco to try to save their season, or sticking with Anthony Richardson and trying to let their young signal caller develop?
I would say Joe Flacco. It sounds weird, but sometimes Richardson is really struggling with a forward pass. Last year we spent, I don't know, 7-8 weeks with TA here discussing the range of outcomes that Joe Flacco has in every single game. But I feel like the range is even wider with Anthony Richardson, but with a thinner tail towards the upside. So every time Richardson drops back, it's either a 99th percentile throw, so to speak, or it's like sailing 3 yards over the heads of his receivers. I remember last week there was an out route, 3rd and 4 or something. Josh Downs wide open on a quick out, and the ball really sails like 5 yards above his head. So this is so inconsistent, and I think it's been really, really hard for the Colts to get like somewhat of a consistent passing game out of him. That at this point, with Shane Steichen, who knows which buttons to click, I feel like the Colts would have a higher floor going forward in this offense. Pass protection has been really, really solid. JT might miss 2, 3, 4 weeks now with his high ankle sprain, but I feel like the passing attack would be much more consistent and fluid with Joe Flacco, even if you are sweating a occasional pick six like every single drive.
Definitely understood. Judah, talk to us. Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco at this point? Obviously, Richardson only 8 starts to his NFL career, left a couple of them early due to injuries, so can't say it's a finished product there. But talking Colts moving forward, Richardson or Flacco to try to salvage the season?
Yeah, they're almost like 2 questions here of like, what would you do from a team building perspective, and what would you do to try and maximize wins right now? And I think from the team building perspective, you definitely want to play Richardson, right? You're not winning a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. or at least that would be highly, highly unlikely, though he probably makes you a little bit better on the point spread right now, given Richardson's play. But I think from just understanding variance, like that is kind of the name of the game with Richardson. He's going to have a bunch of pretty bad outcomes and a bunch of good ones that I'm not ready to say right now that like, oh, he has a definite bust. Though there are obviously some inconsistencies, and I think Flacco can kind of operate the Steichen offense. And I guess from a props perspective, I think the more interesting element here is like looking at a guy like Alec Pierce, whose role drastically decreased as Richardson is going to be throwing a lot of these really deep passes where Pierce excels. And I think Flacco would kind of lead to more of the intermediate stuff with Pittman and Downs. But I think it's a kind of a complicated question because there are multiple different incentives, and we as fans can go and say like, oh, you should try and play to win a Super Bowl. But there are obviously other incentives for different decision makers at play here. So it's a tough question. I think Richardson probably is the right play for long term and just to gather as much data as possible. But Flacco probably is a little bit better on a point spread right now if he has to play a game in week 5.
Understood. Like you said, you're talking about literally two different ways of viewing the situation right now. But Tia, I guess pivoting to you to finish this off, what do you think that the Colts should do? Should they obviously be in that more team building mentality? Like Judah said, they're not winning a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. Or is a situation where, Shane Steichen, of course, younger head coach, is just trying to optimize and win now with what they currently have. And like Judah just outlined, and so did Suma, Flacco's giving you a bigger upside currently to win games now.
Yeah, I mean, Judah's right. From a team building perspective, it's a no-brainer. I mean, Richardson's still very young. He's barely played. He does have this, those wow splash plays, but I would absolutely keep Richardson. I mean, the good news is if you're backing the Colts with Richardson as a starter, you've got a backup that can come right in, and really there's no drop off. So that's a positive, and especially for in-game betting as well. You can take advantage potentially if the market overreacts. But yeah, it's a no-brainer that you keep Richardson in there. Joe Flacco's just there as kind of a Band-Aid if you need it. Obviously, Richardson gets hurt a lot, so with his style of play, but it's definitely Richardson's gig here going forward. It's not a case of Will Levis or maybe people disagree with me. I'm pretty sure Will Levis is not going to be good at this point. Doesn't even have the pedigree of an Anthony Richardson or the upside. So to me, it's not even the same sort of conversation. I think Richardson's still young enough and has shown enough positives that you want to give him some reps. So I would stick to Richardson for sure.
Definitely understood. Makes a ton of sense. Obviously, we know we have with Flacco and Richardson, like we said, 8 games started. Obviously, left a couple early, too early to write the book on him. But, Judah, we're going to go back to you. We're going to talk about we're not going to call you a Saints fan because you're not, but you have been advocating for New Orleans moving forward. And they come out and lose in Atlanta in ridiculous fashion, for lack of a better word. Talk to me about what you saw in that Falcons-Saints game and just how did the Saints lose that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect reminder of the wildness and randomness of football games, of the Falcons scoring basically defensive touchdowns exclusively, and just weird things can happen. One of them was off a tip pass that happened to land in someone's arms. This is the sort of thing that happens, and we shouldn't, I don't think, look at one result of a game and kind of make any sweeping conclusions. I think the Saints did, again, a very good job of mitigating pressure on the offensive line. They're really hurt, but it did not seem to really influence them at all. Granted, Atlanta does not have the strongest of pass rushes, but I think that this is kind of the Saints. We have a pretty good sense of who they are, which is a team that really wants to run first. I certainly would think they're probably better off throwing more, but I'm not an offensive coordinator. I don't know kind of those ins and outs, and perhaps their efficiency would look different if they were throwing 5% over expected as opposed to 7% below expected. But they can attack you downfield. I think the Falcons did a great job, as they've done all season, of limiting explosive plays. The Saints didn't even really attempt many of those. I think we're going to want to be attacking the Saints in spots where defenses struggle to defend explosive plays, but this is still a really good team. The defense was pretty solid yesterday. They're generating plenty of pressure. The coverage units look fine. Look, weird things happen. They obviously should have won that game, and I think basically any adjusted score or thing of that variety would tell you the same thing. But it's a long season, and I'm certainly not bought off the Saints just yet.
And depending what you got in that market with the Saints, a 2.5, you covered that spread there. So
that's right. Hey, good teams win, great teams cover.
Exactly. TA, Falcons Saints, are either of these teams potentially great teams from what you've seen so far? Or talk to me about that matchup and how you kind of also see the NFC South shaking out a little bit after seeing what transpired yesterday.
Yeah, so it's funny. I think in this chat, I think we went 3-0, even though I was on Atlanta at -1.5, and Sumo probably had 2.5. So the number mattered, when you got it. So we all won. Although I will say, from watching that game, halfway through, I just knew that I was on the wrong side. I mean, the Saints are the better team, so that happens. There are times you pick a side, especially an underdog, and you feel like you should easily win, and you don't, and vice versa. So, but I an unbiased view, the Saints definitely were the better team. They pushed around Atlanta, I think, on both sides of the ball. They controlled the line of scrimmage, and that was with a Chris Olave who's dealing with was it a hamstring or a groin, and Alvin Kamara, and they did a very nice job of game planning. And so, I felt better about the Saints at the end of that. I will say, the Taysom Hill injury is bothersome. I feel like whenever he's on the field, it's like success rate through the roof. I would love to see what his on-off splits are, because I feel like he just adds so much. And we know, the one game he missed was that Philly game where the offense was just totally missing something. And then the second half of yesterday as well, they fell off a little bit. But he had such a dimension in the red zone and on short yardage, and they've used him in a number of different ways. It would be nice to have him back going forward. And so, but I think overall, this team is probably the best in the NFC South, in my opinion. I think there's some value to win the division. I think you can get it. I mean, the Falcons are favored, and Saints are like plus 250 or so. I think that the Saints offer way better value in that regard. So, I like them going forward. And one question I have to ask is Dennis Allen sharp now? Because, and it's something I didn't think I'd ever utter those words, because I actually thought it was a great, it was really smart for him to go for it at the end of that game when they were at the 5 or 6 yard line on 4th down, and there's still a couple of minutes left. I think the old Dennis Allen would have kicked the field goal to cut it to 3, and then tried to kick off and get the ball back. But he actually went for it. Now, they didn't get it, but the smart thing, and the thing that most broadcasters don't talk about, is when you don't get it deep into someone's territory, you should get good field position on a 3 and out, which they did. And so it actually worked out well. So I have to give him some bonus points for that. Something that I didn't think he would ever do. So maybe he's evolving a little bit, and that helps their case going forward as well.
In NFL, I guess you can teach some old dogs new tricks. Following your work, cleveanalytics.com, I know how you always discuss how Derek Carr and Dennis Allen as a duo are just not the people to back in situations when they're favorites, and you have to expect them to do the right thing. So often they do not. But as underdogs yesterday, they covered the spread. They were probably the better team there. Like you said, Dennis Allen making some actually plus EV decisions as a coach was not on our bingo card to start the year. But Suma, finish us off. Saints Falcons. What did you learn from that game yesterday?
That the Falcons pass rush is non-existent, like zero pass rush. Saints, their O-line was playing better than anticipated going into the season. Now they were down 2 starters. Starting center was our Cesar Ruiz. Not sure he's really a downgrade, but the Falcons got almost like zero pressure when they were not blitzing, and that's a major concern. Matthew Judon is not playing as well as he did when he was on New England, and the Falcons have way more concerns than I anticipated going to the season. Kyle Pitts, basically a non-factor on offense. Now they're also dealing with O-line injuries, Kirk Cousins. It feels like on some of these intermediate throws, he really needs to bring all his force and all his torque. I'm not a film guy, not a quarterback expert, but it sounds like he still has some way to go, going back to his former performance pre-Achilles. So, lots of concerns with the team. They are now 2-2, game-winning drive at Philadelphia, which was sick, no doubt about it. But yesterday, they really should not have been in this game whatsoever.
No, should definitely not have, but they somehow came out of there with a win. Younghoe Koo knocking down that long field goal to end it. But let's move on, gentlemen. We're going to talk about some future looks before talking some Week 5 and some Monday Night Football. But first things first, we have to shout out to our partner, Sportsbook, Fanduel Sportsbook. Kick off this NFL season with a win on Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. One of the best sportsbooks out there, so easy to use, and that is my favorite part about it is the user interface. Helps you find every bet that you're looking for. And right now, all customers get a profit boost every single NFL game day, which means you can pump up your gridiron winnings multiple times a week. The offer is available for tonight, Monday Night Football, a same-game parlay / same-game parlay plus boost and a live profit boost for a live bet. And that same-game parlay plus could be used, of course, for both of these Monday Night Football games if you want to combine them together. FanDuel has a ton of ways you can get in on NFL action. You can bet money lines, spreads, player props, and more. And plus, with Super Simple live betting, lightning fast bet settlement, and instant withdrawals, FanDuel makes betting on the NFL easier than ever before. Just visit FanDuel.com/forward-progress to join FanDuel today. Must be 21 plus and present in select states or 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonuses are issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms for both offers at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Gentlemen, it is time for futures. Let's start off with the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. I'm going to humbly brag that for the first time in my life, I actually have the best quarterback in most of my group chats been with friends, and Jayden Daniels, -150 to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award after another stellar performance in Arizona. But TA, you were writing in a group chat about a potential look for a wide receiver deeper down the board. Talk to me about who you're looking at for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Jayden Daniels is rightfully the leader, and if he continues this, it's going to be over pretty soon. But just in case he falls off, he's finally facing a real defense and not the Giants, Bengals, Bucks, and Cardinals defenses, probably 4 of the 10 worst defenses in the NFL. We'll see how he does when a little step up in class. I think he'll do fine, but just in case he drops off or God forbid there's an injury, I think there is some value on Xavier Worthy at 25-1, only because we saw the Rashee Rice injury yesterday. He immediately steps up as the #1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes, and right away you're going to get a big uptick in volume, and he's really the only one they've got outside of Travis Kelce who's got any sort of ability. So he's just going to be fed a lot of targets and some likely big play targets. We saw that long touchdown after the Rice injury. So I think from a long shot perspective, he's probably the best one on the board just because of the situation he's in. And, even if the Chiefs do want to upgrade a receiver, it's going to take a few weeks likely. And it's not like that guy is going to just be fed, 10 targets right off the bat. So, he's got a chance here in the next few weeks to really make some hay. But I think at 25-1, it's worth a long shot.
That definitely makes sense. Rashee Rice, unfortunately, going down. Never want to see a star player, anybody get hurt, but unfortunate. But let's keep going down these future boards. We're talking about some of the playoff markets. We've discussed them in previous weeks. Dallas Cowboys to miss the playoffs are now -114. I think that was you as well, T.I. Talk to me about Dallas missing the playoffs. We've touched about them a few times, but why this is still a play at this number? Because I think this was plus money a week ago.
Yeah, so I didn't I thought that they would have a chance to miss the playoffs heading into the year. I thought they're playing essentially as I expected. Nothing that happened on Thursday against the Giants was impressive at all to me. That was a losable. They easily could have lost that game. And then now you've got the injuries to DeMarcus Lawrence and to Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons has a high ankle sprain. Lawrence is going to be out a couple of weeks as well. That's already a defensive line that's struggling to stop the run. They got a really soft middle of the defense, and now you're going to lose maybe your 2 best defenders. So this is a big stretch here. They've got Pittsburgh, and then you've got Detroit, San Francisco, Atlanta, Philly, Houston, Washington, all in a row. This is a tough stretch. I reran. So what I did was I looked at some market rating numbers heading into this past week, and then ran through the rest of the season and, tweaked it for my personal ratings. And I still only have Dallas winning 9 games. And that doesn't include, I did not drop them for, the recent couple of weeks in terms of the injury impact. So even if you knock them down, another point or two for the next, call it 3-4 weeks, you still don't get to a playoff spot. I have them, I think, two spots out of the playoffs with a normal team. So I think this is tough. I mean, you look at their schedule, 2 Washington games, which, heading into the season were supposed to be, cupcakes, are now really tough games. You've got a tough schedule here. Pittsburgh's a lot better than I think people expected going into the year. Even Carolina later in the year, they're a lot more formidable if Andy Dalton's still there. So, I think this is a tough spot. The defense is already not that great, and you lose 2 of your best defenders. Just to me, this has a lot of fragility here. Obviously, Dak and CeeDee Lamb are great, but I'm just not sure they're good enough to get this team to double-digit wins, which I think is what you'll need to make the playoffs. So, to me, this is more than a 50% chance of missing the playoffs. So I do like that to miss the playoff look.
Yeah, no, definitely understood. Like you said, you've been talking, I don't want to say down, just being your realistic self on your opinion on Dallas moving into the season. You've been down on Dallas from the get-go, and definitely seeing some of that in real time through 4 weeks. But let's go to the NFC East quickly before we head back to the NFC South and then go on to Week 5. Washington Commanders 3-1, currently leading the NFC East. Judah, can they end the season in first place in the NFC East?
Yeah, why not? I mean, this has been an incredible offense through 4 weeks by most efficiency metrics. They're having like a top 3 start of any offense in the last 20 years. I don't think that happens by accident. And especially when you consider the other teams in the NFC East. I think that, kind of like TA said, the Cowboys are very fragile. They're now dealing with a bunch of injuries on defense. They're certainly not the same team they were. And the Eagles as well. A lot of injuries, not the same defense. They've basically relied on hero ball from Saquon Barkley as the entirety of their offense, and maybe a long A.J. Brown catch in Week 1. They're dealing with offensive line injuries, and I think that matters a lot more to a quarterback like Jalen Hurts than it does any other. But at the end of the day, what this comes down to is if the Washington offense is 90%, 85% of what they've been so far this season, they should be the division favorites. I mean, like, the defense is really bad, and there's no getting around that, but offense wins in this league. And especially when considering that they're already up a game. The football season is not that long. Being up a game, 4 games in matters. And I think the price is just far too short considering what the offensive ceiling for this team could be.
Understood. Like you said, progression definitely inevitable, like TA outlined as well, but definitely going to be playing some tougher opponents. But if they're only losing, 10% of the current efficiency, that's still a hell of a showing from this Washington offense. Let's wrap it up with the NFC South. We're going right to you, Suma. Atlanta. We saw what happened. We already discussed what happened yesterday. Obviously, you could make the case that there could be improvement as Cousins gets healthy, but at the same time, there are glaring issues with this team. How are you viewing the rest of the season for the Atlanta Falcons, Suma?
Not great. I'm looking at the under 9.5. It's juiced -134, but you basically have to fight 8 wins on their remaining schedule. And we talked about the defense. Pass rush or the front in general is basically non-existent. 0 pass rush. They have a few good coverage guys on the back end, but overall, this is like not a good defense at all. And on offense, I don't see where the upside is. Kyle Pitts, I would not be surprised if he got traded before the deadline. So you're basically looking at Kirk Cousins, who is not at 100%, throwing to Drake London and Donald Mooney. Now they are putting Tyler Algier out there all the time, every time he's on the field. Bijan Robinson is not involved in the passing attack. Drew Delman out several weeks. Caleb McGarry might be back this week. He was limited last Friday But overall, I'm just missing the upside there. I don't know where the upside should come from. And with that defense in combination with that offense, it's kind of hard for me to find 8 wins on their remaining schedule.
This is a good segue into what you're looking at as well, TA. If Suma likes Atlanta under 9.5, who do you have winning the game? Do you agree with him, or do you have another team winning the NFC South?
Yeah, I talked about it before. I do like the Saints. I think, running my numbers, they have the second easiest schedule in the NFL based on my ratings, although the Falcons have the easiest. But I just think that the Saints are a better team overall. And even like this week, the Chiefs game, which would have sounded, much more difficult heading into this week, is a lot more winnable. Markets already depressed that number from 6 down to 5 and maybe lower without Rashee Rice, and just the Chiefs' propensity to keep every game close. They've got a stretch coming up after that. They play Tampa at home, and they get Denver at home. They get the Chargers, Carolina, they get Atlanta, the Browns, the Rams, the Giants. Like, I'm just reading off a bunch of potential wins that I don't have them as an underdog by more than 2 points in any game the rest of the season after this week. So I just think that they're the most well-rounded teams of the NFC South. And, if they can get healthy, that's going to help things a lot. But they've shown enough to me that they can definitely compete. And I think, Suma mentioned a lot of the issues with Atlanta. I'm not sure it's going to go away anytime soon. Kirk Cousins is not getting any younger this season. So I think just based on the price too, you get New Orleans at plus 220 versus a Falcons team that is plus 165. I don't think it's really all that close from a value perspective.
Definitely understood. Very good points there, gentlemen. Let's move on to week 5. Of course, always forward looking here, not only on forward progress, but the NFL, you got to be ready for the next week, the second this week's over. We'll be talking Monday Night Football right after, again, SGP of the week as well, so stay tuned. But Jason, let's get those week 5 odds up from Fanduel, and let's dive into some of these games where we're very intrigued for what's going down. Let's take a look down the board. We're going to start actually with the Bengals-Ravens, because obviously that is a huge divisional matchup. That Ravens going off a massive win. The Bengals coming off their first win of the season. We'll jump to you to start off, Judah. Bengals-Ravens, obviously one of the more important games of the season so far, of course, for both these teams' playoff chances. How do you view this opening number of the Bengals getting 2.5 at home to start?
Yeah, I think this number is probably right. Maybe I'd have it a little bit closer to the Bengals. I think this is a team that has underachieved their results on offense, at least by most efficiency counts. They're probably still a top 5 offense. I'm especially encouraged by Joe Burrow's kind of what I call pocket extension, which is his ability to extend plays once pressure arrives. That was about 0.3 seconds lower last season than it was the rest of his career, and he's back to kind of his standard career numbers. So I think his mobility is certainly improved and has allowed him a bit more success. The defense is atrocious right now. They have absolutely no one rushing the passer outside of Trey Hendrickson. And the way the Baltimore offense is running right now, they should have plenty of time to throw. And if you're not going to generate pressure on the Ravens, this is an offense that should cook. The Cincinnati rush defense also horrific, and you can just get, as we saw last night, you get Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry going. It's tough to stop, and especially in a positive game script, the Ravens can really front run you. But with that said, as I mentioned with Washington before, this is an offensive league, and I think Cincinnati still has the better offense. So I can see this one playing out a bunch of different ways. I think the market's probably about right at the current moment, though.
Yeah, definitely have some time to see what the market ends up doing and see if those numbers move and we get some more injury information, etc. But Suma, let's talk about Cleveland, Washington. We're definitely going to get your thoughts, TA, of course, as the Browns fan here. But right now, it opened at a 3 right now. Washington laying 3 at home against the Browns. I absolutely would not have predicted this number 5 weeks ago, but that's why we do what we do and watch football. But Suma, your thoughts on this opening line in Washington?
Very fascinating from a matchup perspective and from a market perspective, because batters are already battling basically all day across the 3. It got bet out to Washington minus 3.5 earlier today, Then Steam back to -3. Now we have seen more Washington money enter the market. Definitely very interesting from a market perspective. And then we have arguably the best offense in the league right now, or across 4 games, which did not play a tough schedule of opposing defenses, now going or stepping up in class. However, the Browns defense has also not been close to elite throughout 4 weeks. They rank 12th in success rate, 11th in EPA per play, and they also did not face too many juggernaut offenses. Raiders without Devontae Adams, Jaguars without Evan Engram, who got ruled out just before the game. The Cowboys are not great this year on offense. And then the New York Giants. So, I mean, on the surface, I'm struggling to find too many arguments as to why the Browns defense should shut them down. Interested to hear what TA will say. But this is a very, very fascinating matchup to see how the Commies offense performs when they have to step up in class.
Yeah, we're going to definitely learn a lot from this game from Washington's perspective. Like I said, coming into this, I would have never expected this number. I guess it does make sense what we've seen so far. This Browns defense not great. Washington almost on another planet, but it is going to be their best matchup so far. So TA, break this one down for us. Washington, Cleveland, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I saw the look ahead was I think the Browns were -1 before this week. It was 1 either way. So this is a gigantic correction, but it could be. It's obviously the market was wrong on Washington for a while now, and it's corrected itself. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup. Everyone's talking about the Washington schedule. I mean, to be fair, Jaden Daniels did generate the best EPA that Tampa has seen, that Cincinnati has seen, the second best that the Giants has seen. I think Arizona too. So it's not like, from an apples to apples perspective, he's still producing numbers, elite numbers versus those defenses. The Browns are one of those teams where they should be better than they are on defense, but they continue to make mental mistakes, and they're so aggressive. They attack and they're just up the field. It's a Jim Schwartz style on defense that a lot of times, if you have a mobile quarterback who can get out of the pocket, he can make a big play. If you run, kind of the RPO, you can get a one-on-one matchup there and be successful. Misdirections have always, in the last 2 years, have really given them problems. So, they've got to be careful. If they're going to be too aggressive, then I think Daniels and this offense can make them pay. But generally, they should do a better job than some of the other defenses have had against Daniels. And then, it's just hard to lay this kind of number with a defense as bad as Washington. I know they played well yesterday, but generally this is a bottom 3 to 5 defense. And as bad as the Browns are, they lose to the Giants by 4 or 5 points. They lose to the Las Vegas by 4 points. I mean, they're losing by 1 score for the most part. So it's not like they're getting blown out in most of these situations. So, the point spread should matter here when you're talking about a key number with a field goal. So, I am interested to see a young team like Washington play back-to-back road game. They haven't been home in 2 weeks after the Cincinnati game. They flew to Arizona early, stayed out there all week. And, we've seen situations like this in the past. I have to dig up some of my numbers. I looked at this, I think, with San Francisco maybe a year or two ago when they used to do the kind of the 2 weeks out on the East Coast. These teams, it's kind of like the NBA has the same struggles that they're at home. They're away from home for 2 weeks and they get home, and that first game back is when you see a drop off in play and kind of a letdown. And it's a young team, so you never know. You could see something similar to that. But yesterday was a tough situation too, with 2 straight road games off of Monday night. So you never know. Like, they might just be, one. And Jaden Daniels is kind of a mature for his age. So those are some of the things that are tough to quantify. But I just think 3.5 is probably a little too high. I think 3 is likely the right number. So I am interested to see this battle with the number going back and forth. And the Browns do need to get their left tackle situation and potentially center situation fixed, because their O-line just continues to drop. They drop like flies, and the communication is a struggle, and that's really what's hurting this offense. Otherwise, if you give Watson time, I think they're going to be able to move the ball. It's just a matter of getting that offensive line fixed.
Yeah, this Washington defensive line somehow did very well against Kyler Murray this past weekend, but obviously lacks the big names. Their tandem of defensive tackle, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, have not played well, and it's not a team you expect to get a lot of pressure. So against this depleted Browns offensive line, as well as Watson, who is very pressure sensitive, could maybe not be an issue this week. And I would say that if any other year, I mean, we probably would never see this number even pop up, obviously without Jaden Daniels, but Browns plus 3.5 would be like, honestly, probably my favorite look of the week, and probably still is for this, considering Washington does. But as like a man who has a quarterback for the first time in 27 years of living, I think I'm just gonna be happy for a little bit.
You better not fade your team, buddy. Your team's good. You got a quarterback. I don't want you fading your own team here.
Now I won't. Now, because before it was too easy. Like I knew Ron Rivera was going to do something terrible. I knew something was going to happen. Right now, I'm okay with being happy. But T, we're going right back to you for Buffalo Houston, because this is obviously a massive showdown between two great teams in the AFC. Though Houston narrowly avoiding defeat against the Jaguars. I know you were all over that last week, TA. But talk to me now about Houston hosting Buffalo, laying 1.5 at home and open.
Yeah, I don't really. I lean Buffalo. I have to do a little bit more work here, and they were 1-point favorites till about 2 hours ago when our buddy Hitman released on his service. He released Houston, and the line flipped. Obviously, not a ton of value between the ones either way, but I am interested to see how this line progresses throughout the week. Houston has not played well this year. I know that they're 3-1, but they've really struggled. I mean, they let a mediocre Indy team hang around, and they won by 2 there. Looking back, that Chicago win looks even worse. Chicago's just nothing on offense, and they could not break away. Obviously, there was a fumble in the red zone, which helped, but that was a team they should beat up pretty easily, and they couldn't. They got destroyed at Minnesota, and then again yesterday, that game, Jacksonville played them neck and neck. Probably should have won that game. And so I'm just not that impressed with Houston. And so I think a lot of their ratings are still kind of still leaning to their priors, because if you just look at what Buffalo has done this year, generally, they're the much better team. And I don't really put too much stock into what happened the prior week and what happened yesterday. I call it a schedule loss. Like that was one of those where you just see it every year. These teams, play really well, kind of above their means a little bit, and then they just hit a juggernaut in the Ravens. It was a bad matchup just off of a Monday night game. It was just a tough spot generally. Like that doesn't faze me from a ratings perspective. So I generally think Buffalo is the better team here overall, and I'd rather have Josh Allen in this spot. CJ Stroud in this team they have not really stepped up in class outside of the Ravens 2 games last year. There's really no other situation that I can recall that they beat a team that is clearly, on their level or better. So this is going to be a unique situation for them in terms of, stepping up in terms of competition. So, to see Buffalo off a blowout loss, they'll be fired up for this game, and I think they'll be focused. So I would lean Buffalo, but still need to do a little bit more work here.
Definitely understood. Obviously a lot of time to figure out that one. But John, let's talk some Monday Night Football. We have 2 games tonight. Obviously, last week, the Washington-Cincinnati game saved that doubleheader on Monday night because that Bills-Jags game was nothing. But we're actually going to start by discussing the 8:30 Eastern kickoff, which is the Seattle Seahawks in Detroit. Seattle getting 4.5 last time I saw on Fanduel, but we'll get those odds up shortly. We're going to start with you, Suma. Talk to me about your thoughts on Detroit and Seattle.
Yeah, I like Seattle here in this one, catching 4 or 4.5. I'm not sold on the Lions. I really like what I saw from the Seahawks so far. Yes, they are dealing with injuries along the defensive line, but I think that their D-line is pretty deep, and the defense also comes a little bit more via scheme than most other defenses. And Mike McDonald completely destroyed Jared Goff last year, and that kind of scheme that he plays where Goff has to make complex reads post snap is not really his forte. And I would expect him to struggle against all those confusing defensive looks. Also, Jared Goff's not that great against cover 2, so I would expect Mike McDonald to rotate into a lot of too high looks post snap. And this Lions offense has not been that great overall so far. I think that Jared Goff has not had a great performance yet. Geno Smith is, to me, is the better quarterback right now. And yes, Aiden Hutchinson might wreak havoc, but overall, I like the matchup for the Seattle passing game against that Lions defense that will be without Brian Branch. I think that Seattle's offense should have a pretty decent game. And all that being said, I think the gap between these two teams is not 4 points, in my opinion.
Judy, you viewing this game the same way?
Yeah, I think this is a tail spot for me on both sides rather than kind of looking at the medians. I think Seattle has a pretty wide range of outcomes, especially on the defensive side. I mean, they're dealing with some injuries on the defensive line, especially at defensive tackle, where they'll be missing a bunch of guys. But I think the real question is, how good is this Seattle defense? Is it a function of their incredibly easy opposing quarterbacks, or are they legit good? And it's one thing to kind of downweight a team for having good performances against really bad offenses, but they've been dominant, and that's exactly what you'd expect dominant defenses to do. But that might not matter against the Detroit offense, which themselves they have struggled this season, at least relative to what they've done in the past couple of years. But it's also a small sample, and this is kind of the same cast of characters. We have a much larger sample of this team having a bunch of success. So I think understanding where those teams are at, it's a great game to learn for me, and maybe to bet on the alts, but it's not something I'm willing to kind of bet as in the medians and what I think is most likely to happen.
Understood. Yeah, Seahawks, Lions. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I would have liked Seattle if they didn't have so many cluster injuries on that defensive front. I mean, I think their entire starting defensive line is out. Maybe Jaron Reed's the only one who could play, but that's tough against this offensive line and the fact that Detroit can play bully ball. I do agree that Jared Goff has not played well overall. So, I thought the scheme of McDonald, especially what he did last year when he was with Baltimore against this team, has the advantage. But if they're just going to line up and just, run right at this defensive front that's missing everybody, then it may not matter. So from that regard, it's going to be hard for them to slow down the Lions run game. I would look at obviously Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, had a field day last week against Arizona. You might see a similar sort of setup here. So I think it does lead to a little slower game, maybe a little bit lower scoring. But I do think Geno Smith and the offense will be able to move the ball. I mean, he's had two of his best games of his entire career the last 2 seasons in Detroit, scoring 37, 44 points. And they clearly feel comfortable in the dome here. And so, I do think it'll be a fun game. It's just a matter of who gets more stops. And I think that generally, I would lean Seattle, but it's not a play for me just because of I just wish they had maybe 1 or 2 of those guys back, feel a little more comfortable. And obviously not even have Jerome Baker, who can cover out of the linebacking core for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield would have helped. But, like I said, lean Seattle, but I'm not, have not bet it at this point.
Understood. Don't have to bet every game on the board. But let's talk about the first, I guess, technically Monday Night Football game, the Miami Dolphins and Snoop Huntley hosting the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis. Huntley announced the starter yesterday. And this line was sitting, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking at the odds screen. I saw one basically all week, 1.5. Then Huntley came in. It wasn't right away when they announced the Huntley news that this line moved. I think it took a little bit of time for this to really solidify in the 2.5 range. You guys can, again, correct me if I'm wrong. But we'll go back to UTA. Titans, Dolphins. What are you expecting to see from this one?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. I mean, Huntley is probably is probably a point upgrade above Skylar Thompson, which is incredible. Skylar Thompson just should not start another NFL game at this point. I think we've seen enough. At least Huntley has proven that he can move the ball. He uses legs effectively. I think it can open up some lanes for Devin Achane tonight. So, that will help. I don't think the Tennessee run defense is nearly as good as some of their prior years. And earlier this year, they allowed almost 4 yards of carry to the Bears, which looking back on it looks pretty bad. So, I do think they'll be able to establish some of the run game here and some of the explosiveness from Achane. But I don't know. I have no idea. This Titans team is really mystifying. They've got some pieces, but Will Levis just continually makes horrible mistakes. Their special teams are terrible, especially with the punt block team. I mean, 2 punt blocks in the first 3 weeks is pretty unheard of. So I don't really want to get involved here. I think I agree that Miami should be a really small favorite with Huntley, but I just no interest in this game for me.
Yeah, definitely. Sumo, we'll go to you before going to Judah and getting that same game parlay, because it's definitely it seems like a tail outcome kind of game, and we're going to get to that shortly. But Sumo, Titans Dolphins, talk to me.
Yes, I will have a tail SGP in this one, going with either a crazy outlier performance by Snoop Huntley or Will Levis, or maybe both. But other than that, I just don't have a strong take on this one. Just want to see how Tyler Huntley off the street plays behind this patchwork offensive line without Terran Armstead. How Mike McDaniel uses him. Maybe they go run heavy with him. I have no clue. On the other side, Titans defense, not great. No Jeffrey Simmons. Will Levis experience is crazy. So we'll just watch it in the morning and see if I can draw any conclusion and data points out of that one.
Understood. All right, Judah, let's talk Titans Dolphins. Let's talk the same game parlay. I feel like, and I'm glad that you chose this one. I'm glad you mentioned that too, right there. So, like, I feel like most people would just look at this board and be like, okay, Seahawks, Lions, two teams. You know some of these offensive players more. You know that you can trust them. But no, we're looking to find some value. And by doing that, you got to zig when people are zagging. So, Judah, take it away. Titans Dolphins.
Yeah, that's right. I think TA actually, kind of teed this one up perfectly by mentioning basically all of the wild variants and crazy things that have happened to the Titans that are likely decreasing their pricing, and certainly Levis's pricing, and it's like not sustainable, which is just like insane turnovers and block punts and things of that variety, which I don't think sustain itself over the long term. And I think there's a really good case to be made that Levis himself is as a quarterback, he's particularly sensitive to his matchup and the scheme that he is in, meaning like the percentage of plays he can stay in the scheme. And you want to kind of be attacking him in spots where he has a matchup advantage over the defense. And he hasn't really had that so far this season. I think the Bears and Jets are some really solid units. The Packers have also done a pretty good job on defense. And I mean, he took 8 sacks also. I think that's he certainly has sack problems, but I think 8 is an outlier number in particular. And he's a tails type of quarterback. And he likes to look deep. And this is a Miami team that's one of the biggest pass funnels in the NFL, meaning they're a lot easier to pass on than run on. They have the second biggest gap in EPA between passing and rushing, at least entering week 3. And they're also a defense that is allowing a bottom 5 rate of explosive plays. They're bleeding those, and we know Levis is going to look to deliver those. I also would not kind of discount the fact that DeAndre Hopkins' snap count has slowly been increasing each week. I think he should probably be closer to a full-time player. But the angle we're going to attack here is basically the Titans passing offense, in particular their deep passing offense against a very vulnerable Miami secondary. And I think we're going to see some more passing volume. And if we can hit on some deep passes here, then we should get the recipe for success. So I think when you think about the Titans and their deep passing attack, it's going to start primarily with Calvin Ridley. And Fanduel has introduced this new cool market on catching a 20 or 30-yard pass. And I think in order to get to maybe I shouldn't have started with this. I should have ended with this. But we're going to start with Calvin Ridley at 30 to have a 30-yard catch. Given that, I think it's fairly likely that, and maybe we're betting on a couple of these, he will also get 90 receiving yards, and Will Levis we can get at 250. I think in this particular game script, I actually usually you kind of get an inverse correlation of like if Will Levis is passing a lot, this is the sort of thing that would happen in a negative game script when they're coming back. But I actually think this is a function of the team winning and pressing their advantages rather than try and run the ball, but to have success in the deep passing game. So we're going to get Tennessee money line, Ridley 90. We're going to get this at about, at least it was 20 to 1, 21 to 1, even better. We're basically betting on Will Levis and the Titans to go pass heavy, them to hit on some deep shots, including a couple to Calvin Ridley.
I saw that Calvin Ridley when I was looking before. His prop was like 42.5 receiving yards. I was just like, this is low. And I'm glad now to see that Judah is riding the Ridley train. And great analysis there. Miami pass on defense. Will Levis has that rocket arm. Let's see if they can catch 50-50 balls tonight. But that's the SGP for this evening. And that's going to wrap us up for week 5. Look ahead. We'll be back same time, same place next week. And also make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's amazing content all week long, including live watch-alongs, best bet shows, prop shows, etc. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Like this video. It's the best way to show support. Leave some comments and share the content with your friends on socials. It's a great way to help us grow. Same time, same place next week. We'll see you guys next time. We have everybody. Have a great week. Best of luck with your bets tonight.